you read me a bedtime story?
We are currently in a bathtub.
Yeah, but I'm feeling a little sleepy.
I'm gonna be honest, Lady Gleep, I'm a bit concerned about reading you a bedtime story in a bathtub. People drown in bathtubs.
But what about like a little short one? I'll keep my eyes open. You could tap my head if I start to fade out, maybe a little Dr.
Oh,
Seuss?
Dr. Seuss? Oh,
Yeah.
no. Okay, so I burned all of Dr. Seuss's books pursuant to the laws of Twitter, and yeah, you missed the bonfire.
I have read Fahrenheit 451, I think
That
is
one
the
is,
name of
yeah, that's not a Dr. Seuss book.
the burning of the books.
It is about the burning of the books.
Not a bedtime story at all. Would not recommend to sleep to.
Burk Bark Bjork, everybody. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of The Liberal Bubble. I am your host, Skydoge, and my co-host,
Miss Lady Gleep. Hello, everyone. I'm feeling real Joey today.
she's feeling really Joey. For those who don't know Joey, do you want to explain, let them meet Joey?
Joey's my Italian alter ego. Sometimes he slips in, sometimes he slips out and disappears for a few months on a business trip. And other times he's here to stay and he'll cut your hair and he'll keep your credit card.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And when he's not here, it's me. It's Lady Gleep.
Yeah.
Sometimes we go in and out. We play.
Just like me and Skydoge, I don't know if we've ever shared with the audience the origins of Skydoge.
We have never. On episode 5, we have not talked about it in episodes 1 through 4.
Well, let's do it.
Let's do it right now.
I don't know how it came about, but I do know that Skydoge is a Canadian name, and I know what you're saying out there, listener. You're saying you just mispronounced Canadian. No, I didn't. I'm not talking about Canada. I'm talking about Canada. And Lady Gleep.
Exactly.
Yeah, Lady Gleep knows exactly what I'm talking about.
I've been there before. If you think you've been there, you probably have because it's really close to Canada. It's actually up 5 inches to the left.
Yeah, that's an important part. So Canada is a carbon copy of Canada on top of Canada, but 5 inches up and to the left. There are very few people that know about it. I was the first resident of Canada. Thus, I am the president or monarch or something. I'm also an anthropomorphic dog man. I don't think that has to do at all with my Canadian identity. But
I would compare it to Hollywood, like in BoJack.
Yes.
Like it's not Hollywood, it's Hollywood, and we're not in Canada, we're in Canada.
Exactly. Though it bears mentioning that I was born and have lived my entire life in the United States.
Yeah.
That is a relevant fact.
And it wasn't really even important to the story, but it's good for detail.
Well, I guess.
Glad you said something.
I think people will get confused. Like, you're an American talking about Canada, and Canada is 5 inches up and to the left of everything in Canada, but it's also a state of mind.
It is. It's kind of like a paper town.
Sure, I hate that book.
Not a good book, but a great country, and you should definitely come visit.
Absolutely.
Canada.
Come to Canada.
Mr. Skydoge and I can give you a wonderful tour. He's from Saskatchewan.
And the only citizenship test is speaking the language, which has no rules. There's no right way to speak it, but there are thousands of wrong ways.
Yes, you can do it very wrong.
Yeah, and Lady Gleep and I will tell you if you are.
But you just got to goof for it.
You got to goof for it and spot Canadian like a prude Canadian.
You can't be scared. If I hear you're scared on your language and your dialect, then no, you're not from here.
Right. And off your like hesitating and doesn't know what you're gonna see, that's very clear.
It's very clear. You didn't know what
you're not a Canadian.
You don't know to. But it's funny because everyone always knows what we're saying.
Yeah, it's just modified English.
Yeah. Definitely modified to be better. I hope that was implied, but definitely language, and from that came Skydoge.
Yes.
Skydoge is Canadian as heck.
I am. That's a little bit about me, a little getting to know you.
We have a bunch of alters.
Yeah, we have a lot of personalities. There's too much personality for one person, so we funnel it into multiple.
Exactly.
But that's just a little bit of getting to know you on what is going to be a little bit more of a laid-back episode this week. We'll start with our recurring segment, Shit I Got Wrong. First and foremost, I got wrong I'm going to say that again. First and foremost, I told you that this episode would be a continuation of impeachment analysis, but turns out I needed some time to really read through the trial briefs of both sides of the impeachment, because that's a thing that I think is important. And I do want to give like a product that is of sufficient educational quality and good research practices, but that's a bit difficult to do well on a 1-week turnaround. A lot of the shows that I admire and aspire to emulate have research teams. And
so if you ever want to be our research team,
hit me up. I will pay you in experience.
Woo! The best type of monetary value out there.
Take it to the bank. Get kicked out of the bank. That's an experience itself. So today we're taking a step back from the wonkery of it all.
And if you're still with us on episode 5, hello. And if you're new, just randomly jumping in at episode 5, also hello.
Welcome. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited you found us. Our audio quality finally doesn't fucking suck.
Yeah, this is the first episode where
both of us are sounding right.
Yeah, both of us are sounding good. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Oh my gosh.
Fingers crossed.
My fingers.
My little fingies is crossed.
They all crossed. But the thing that inspired me to want to talk about a particular topic, that topic being cancel culture, is the right-wing media seeming to collectively lose its fucking mind over the fact that 6 Dr. Seuss books will no longer be published.
Yeah, and just a quick sidebar before we jump into this conversation. I was talking to you earlier this week about how we should definitely have episodes in between these heavy topics where we're talking about what's currently happening outside of the things that are also huge and currently happening. And I think this story is kind of crazy, but also leads into a greater topic. And going with that, what 6 books?
I will tell you what 6 books. They are... And to Think I Saw It on Mulberry Street, the first book he published in 1937. A book called If I Ran the Zoo, published in 1950. As well as McElliot's Pool, a book called On Beyond Zebra, ! A book called Scrambled Egg Super, ! A lot of exclamation points. It's almost like an episode title of The Liberal Bubble. The final book that will no longer be published is called The Cat's Quizzler.
So I've never heard of any of those 6 books.
I have heard of And to Think I Saw It on Mulberry Street. I had that in my library growing up.
Do you remember what it's about, or like if...
I didn't fuck with it. So when it comes to Dr. Seuss, I am a fan of 2 books in my childhood. I really liked the Sneetches, and more than that, I was obsessed with the Lorax. I think I had the Lorax read to me all the time. That one just hits. I don't know why.
For me, I really grew up, I'm a visual lady. So growing up, I had this, I want to say VHS or DVD. It was 3 short stories, but all like cartoon movies. The first one and my favorite one was Daisy Had Maisie. One of my favorite Dr. Seuss stories. I don't know if it's a book or not. It might be, but it's about a little girl who grows a daisy out of her head and then becomes famous. And it's like fame is always not what you think fame is never what you think it's gonna be, which was a fun story. Also, like the uniqueness of it all, how people like take your uniqueness and just like money. And then there was one where it was like two villages, and one liked to butter their toast on the bottom, and one liked to butter their toast on the top. And like a dad lived, there was like a little grandson on the wall. He's like, "Why are we so divided?" And there was like wars over the toast.
Oh wow.
And then the third one was, I think, the Sneetches. They had star bellies.
That's
and they
the
would go
Sneetches.
through the machines.
Yep. Love the Sneetches.
And like anytime someone would go through the machine, then everyone would go through the machine. And it was like, no one's unique.
Yes. The way I remember the Sneetches is like, okay, for anyone who hasn't read the Sneetches are these like big bird looking creatures. And some of them have stars on their stomachs and some of them don't. And the star is a symbol of status. You want to be a Sneetch with a star. And one day, a person shows up with a machine that can put a star on your belly. Mm-hmm. So all the Sneetches who don't have stars in their belly get stars on their belly.
Yo.
And then the OG star Sneetches are like, well, stars aren't cool anymore. So then they pay to go through the machine to have their stars removed. And it's this back and forth about what makes a person special. It also works very well as an allegory for race.
I still at 24. I'm like, what?
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm naive.
I don't think you're naive. I mean, it's not like a direct allegory to race, but it's noting like physical characteristics and that they're arbitrary in determining status, and that the particular characteristics which are valued change on a dime.
That makes sense.
Like,
I guess to me, I think about it as just like as a human, like as a person. Like, I think people are like that no matter race, but I could see how it could be tied to race, if that makes any sense.
Say more. I'm a bit
like I connect it to like status and wealth, and that's really it. I don't like I never tied it to how people could what's the word? What the heck's that word? Could
give me a hint.
Like not notice. I don't know the word.
I don't know either. But like,
anyway,
I get what you mean, because they go through this machine, which is a capitalist invention.
Yeah, I like think about it on a monetary level. And
that's interesting.
Like a status of wealth. I don't think about it as a status of race, because all the Sneetches are the same color.
That's interesting. I always assumed it was a commentary on race because of the stressing of a physical characteristic.
Yeah, no, I guess I never saw it like that. I saw the star as like something of like monetary status.
Either way, like I think both readings work.
So it didn't really even cost anything to change.
I don't know if they had a currency that they had to exchange.
Because if it was about, now that I'm thinking about it, if it's about status and wealth, you shouldn't be able to go through the machine and change yourself for free.
Yeah.
They would be stuck with no stars on their bellies. It wouldn't have worked. I remember the story of the guy making money with the machine. I don't know.
I don't remember it either. Perhaps it's time we reread the Sneetches. But I know Dr. Seuss had a bit of an anti-capitalist streak. I'm just thinking about the one slur from my favorite Lorax.
There's a slur?
What?
There's a slur in the Lorax?
No. Who said that?
You just said I was thinking of a...
I was thinking of the Onceler. It's the name of a character.
Oh, the Onceler.
Yeah, he's a person
I thought you said I'm thinking of the one slur in the Lorax.
So as far as...
like, where is there a slur in that
There is
movie?
not, to my knowledge, any slurs within the Lorax, and it is not being canceled.
I was just so confused.
Yeah, so the one slur in the Lorax was this character who is responsible for exploiting and destroying the environment by using the truffula trees to further his business ventures, much to the chagrin of the Lorax, who is there to protect the forest. So he's the onceler because he uses things once and then they're ruined.
Yeah. I really liked the movie when it came out. Hashtag T Swift and Zac Efron love romance.
I've not seen it.
What? You just talked about it as your favorite book.
Yeah, but like, listen.
You're not into movies?
Am I not into movies? Have we met? I love movies. The problem is...
Yeah, that's why I'm confused.
The book is like 20 pages, and I am skeptical that that can get stretched to 90 minutes without...
I promise you it's good. I've seen it twice.
All right.
Do you like Horton Hears a Who, the movie?
I've not seen it, Glow.
What the heck? Are you kidding?
The last Dr. Seuss movie I saw was Cat in the Hat starring Mike Myers, and I loved it. It was weird as hell.
And why did you feel like you were going to be disappointed if you continued that streak?
Because The Cat in the Hat is a cursed object of a film. It is horrifying and strange. And so once they started making conventional animation, I was like, this isn't going to deeply unsettle me. I don't want to watch this.
I guess that's true.
I don't know. Maybe I'm an anthropomorphic dog man because...
Horton Hears a Who's so cute, though.
But, like...
It's so cute.
The anthropomorphic cat man in Cat in the Hat might explain why I'm an anthropomorphic dog man.
That makes sense.
I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Did you also watch... I assume you watched The Grinch because that came before.
I've never seen the original Grinch. I've seen the Eddie...
Not the...
Or not the Eddie Murphy Grinch. I'd like to see that. But I've not seen anything except the Jim Carrey version, which I do adore quite a bit.
Oh, okay. Then yeah.
I've seen that. Yeah, I just haven't seen the original animated one, nor the Benedict Cumberbatch new one.
I like that one. It's not as good as the original animation nor the Jim Carrey, but it's still good. But I remember this actually happened a few weeks ago, to like circle back to right wing. Joe Biden was making a list of children's books or something, and then like a Dr. Seuss wasn't on it at all.
Yeah, specific... you got your finger right on the money. So there's this thing that there's an event every year on Dr. Seuss's birthday called Read Across America Day, and Dr. Seuss is always mentioned historically on Read Across America Day. It is his birthday after all. This year he was not mentioned. And Dr. Seuss Enterprises decided that they would no longer publish these specific 6 books.
On that day, they said that? They came out?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
But they came out and came forward. Did anyone want these books gone for a while and they finally were heard? Or did they just come out and do it on their own?
I will quote from a New York Times article published on the 2nd of March, 2021, called 6 Dr. Seuss books will no longer be published over offensive images. And they say, or they write, I quote, "These books portray people in ways that are hurtful and wrong," Dr. Seuss Enterprises said in the statement. The business said the decision came after working with a panel of experts, including educators, and reviewing its catalog of titles. It goes on to say more things. But I find this particularly interesting because cries of Dr. Seuss being canceled they just register as rather strange to me when the people canceling Dr. Seuss are Dr. Seuss Enterprises. It strikes me as a example of free enterprise and completely unregulated, unmoderated.
It was a decision they
made it, okay? No government said, "Excuse me, Dr. Seuss Enterprises, you can no longer publish these books." That simply did not happen. Of their own accord, they seem to have assembled a panel of experts, including educators, reviewed all of his books, and found 6 which they decided perpetuate ideas about race, particularly in their images, that are not helpful, not really necessary to continue to perpetuate. And that evoked a goddamn firestorm.
It's weird because when you tell me that, I remember just seeing it very briefly, and then I'm reminded of the bubble that I'm in because I literally maybe saw it just being covered on the news.
Yeah, I think that's important because we are in the liberal bubble, and we can observe what's happening
Like, I
outside
didn't hear the uproar at
Really?
all. I just saw that it happened, and I saw that I guess I saw some like on Fox News, but not actually on the TV, just like quick little snippets of people being so angry, and I was like, wow, slow news week. That was just how that's where my brain went.
Like, yes, I think it is strange that media organizations are really talking about this. You're right to note that like Fox and like similarly right wing, not right wing, but right leaning channels like OAN, Newsmax, they're really interested in talking about this. Other people interested in talking about this include congressional Republicans, which
Yeah.
seems like a
But
massive
shouldn't they
waste of. Yeah,
be?
they got some fucking things to do, I would imagine.
Yeah, shouldn't they be like so mad about this 1.9 trillion dollar bill that just went
Oh,
through?
honey.
Shouldn't they be like warning all the people
Honey,
about
honey,
all the
honey.
awful
Okay,
liberal things that are gonna happen to them
they
now?
did try. They ran that message. They ran the message that this. To switch gears briefly to the COVID relief bill. Congressional Republicans united in opposition to this $1.9 trillion stimulus plan. It passed through budget reconciliation on partisan lines after negotiations between Senate Democrats and Republicans, particularly Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Rob Portman, I believe. And ultimately, Portman did not support the bill anyway. So I'm so glad we negotiated with a very reasonable party willing to compromise. Here's the thing. The $1.9 trillion stimulus package is incredibly popular with the American public across party lines. And so it's difficult for Republicans to say, we outright oppose this, because their constituents, 60% of them, according to a Morning Consult poll that I looked at, think this is a good piece of legislation. Its form of economic relief, its method of economic relief, is much more direct than the 2008 stimulus, which is the thing that we've been comparing it to in the media. It doesn't bail out banks and indirectly try to help struggling homeowners in a really obscure way. It provides direct payouts to struggling Americans. That's a popular thing. So, as I've heard it, and I think it's quite correct, both sides were trying, they wanted to, quote, get caught trying. Democrats wanted to get caught trying to negotiate on a bipartisan level. Republicans wanted to get caught trying to oppose this big spending bill, but ultimately they knew it was going to pass, and they weren't that interested in stopping its passage. They just made a lot of noise and procedural problems. Like, this Senate clerk had to read the entirety of the bill, which, took hours. Like, a nonpartisan bureaucrat in the Senate had to read a huge document because one senator requested it. And that really helped with the whole negotiation process.
Yeah, so basically they're not going to talk about it in the news a bunch because there's really, what are they going to do? It's already happening and it's being passed.
Well, it was passed.
Like, how do they decide what they want to make seem like evil versus what they shouldn't? Like, why is this whole Dr. Seuss thing like the belly of the storm? And
it's a good question. I don't have a name. I'm not like, this person decides who. But
they just have a big wheel of wow.
It's a question of messaging. So you want to, as a party, have a particular message, and
we love books.
No, it's more like the left is trying to cancel free expression, as evidence.
And free expression is being racist in public.
And censorship and violation of the First Amendment rights is when a private company decides to stop publishing 6 of its own intellectual properties. That is somehow in violation of the First Amendment.
So when I'm going to do some comparison here. So let's talk about Dr. Seuss, how the right is like, stop canceling Dr. Seuss. And everyone on the left is like, well, we're not.
One thing. Just to answer your question more directly, why Dr. Seuss and not a $1.9 trillion stimulus? It's difficult to talk about policy. They may well return to it and try to bash it in the future, but Dr. Seuss is a culture wars issue. It has nothing. There's no substance, and so it's easy to whip people into an emotional frenzy without having to explain the intricacies of a $1.9 trillion package and why it's bad.
Also,
it's just like...
Also, the way they word it, it's like, oh, we're canceling Dr. Seuss forever. Every single book of his, erase it. They're never going to be printed ever again. When that's...
absolute nonsense, yes.
Really not even it. So when you hear, like, when I hear there's a frenzy, I'm like, but over what?
Well, that's that. It's incredible. I mean, But go ahead.
Do you think that when, like, the left cancels people like J.K. Rowling, do you think the right's like... I'm like, do people on the right like Harry Potter? Probably, I guess.
Yeah.
Are they like, we're going to buy more Harry Potter books?
Maybe. I mean, that happened to these 6 Dr. Seuss books that nobody knew about until now. They're suddenly bestsellers.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah, they skyrocketed. And... I mean, I can't help but wonder, like...
they're like, gotta get them before they're not on the press
exactly,
anymore.
And my question is why? Is it because you're being told... is it because that you want to take this book and expose your child to it while putting it in proper context and explaining that the depictions of people in it are racist and reductive and a product of their time, which had different values? Or is it because somebody said you can't have it anymore and now you want it? I don't know.
And then there's a third thing where it's like, this could potentially be very valuable because it's not going to exist anymore.
Maybe.
That's like the third thing I could think of.
Yeah, like...
but I'm like, that's weird.
People collecting racist texts for future racist book buyers. I don't know. Here's the thing. As you mentioned, Dr. Seuss is not being canceled. And we'll talk more broadly about what being canceled means later. I want to stay focused on Dr. Seuss because I think it's absolutely wild. At issue are the 6 books we mentioned up top, 5 of which I've never heard of, 6 of which you've never heard of. Tucker Carlson did a lengthy monologue on this topic. It was about 6 minutes, and it's centered on a book we already discussed, The Sneetches. And it presented the topic in an incredibly intellectually dishonest way, as if The Sneetches was being canceled. And I wrote down the conclusion of his monologue.
Why would he talk about a book that had nothing to do with anything, except for the fact Dr. Seuss wrote it?
Well, when I read the statement, it might become clear what he's trying to get at, but this might strike you as a surprise. Tucker Carlson is not interested in making good faith arguments.
How does this man still have a job?
He's incredibly successful. He makes a ton of money and gets a ton of viewers. But listen, I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson. If there are any conservatives listening to this episode, hello, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson.
Hey. Neither am I.
As he said in the conclusion, after explaining what the Sneetches is, he said, "If there's a more powerful statement on the universal brotherhood of man, it's probably not in the children's section of the bookstore. For 60 years, American children have read the Sneetches and books like it, and that's one of the reasons why we have the country we have today, in which most Americans, those who don't work for the university or the Joe Biden administration, accept Martin Luther King's most famous precept, that what matters is the content of our characters and not the color of our skins. The Sneetches affirms this. The story is a plea for colorblindness, and that's why the forces of wokeness hate it and Dr. Seuss. When the people in charge cancel Dr. Seuss, what they're really trying to eliminate is a very specific kind of mid-century American culture, a culture that championed meritocracy and colorblindness and the superiority of individual achievement over tribal identity. These were once called liberal values. Modern liberals don't want to be reminded that they used to believe any of this. If your kids are allowed to read Dr. Seuss, they will know that this was a different country not so long ago, a place where people tried hard not to hate each other, a place where the population was encouraged, begged by its leaders to reject identity politics in favor of universal values and the things that connect us all. Dr. Seuss was never a major literary figure, but his memory matters more than it ever has. The battle over Dr. Seuss, what he stood for, the battle over what it means to be racist, will have consequences that extend for generations. If we lose that battle, America is lost. End quote. So, a couple things. Sneetches is not at issue. Obviously. What I find so striking about this tirade is just the factual. It's just it's a fucking trip. Okay, so it's one of my favorite sections for its downright absurdity is the claim that when people in charge cancel Dr. Seuss, the word people in charge is carrying a lot of weight in that sentence because the people in charge are, again, the Dr. Seuss Enterprises. So that is a bit vague intentionally. What they're really trying to eliminate is a very specific kind of mid-century American culture. Red flag. Red flag.
I'm just thinking, in what world was there no racism that you're
Tucker
talking
Carlson's
about?
world. And so
where's this world that existed before this
right,
world?
he describes
Things weren't actually so much
right,
worse.
he describes a culture of championing meritocracy and colorblindness and the superiority of individual achievement over tribal identity. He goes on to say that we're begged to reject identity politics in favor of universal values. I don't know what values he's referring to.
Remember when only white voices
That's
were
exactly
heard
what
and
he's
it was
saying.
He's like, remember when there was only white voices that we heard and cared about?
It jumps out at the end when he says the battle over Dr. Seuss, what he stood for, and then he stops and begins a new clause. The battle over what it means to be racist will have consequences that extend for generations. This is a proxy conversation in the view of Tucker Carlson over what it means to be racist and classified as a racist. And I think inherent to this, or implied in this, is a perceived threat by Tucker Carlson that he'll be called racist, which I think I already did on this episode. I think Tucker Carlson is a racist and makes race-based appeals to his audience and provides poor information. It's just, when I heard this, I was like, this is next level garbage, because not only does it completely ignore the substance of the complaints, which are particular depictions of Asian people, black people. That is not the subject of discussion. Instead, we have a lengthy discussion of a book that is not a problem, is not at issue, that is deceptive in the powers that cancel the books, and which is really just all about what it means to be called racist, and that it seems like it's too easy to be classified as a racist these days. I feel for you, Tucker.
Also, it just makes me think, I'm like, am I not, did I interpret the Sneetches wrong growing up? Am I colorblind to like this, or do I
don't think you did. I certainly wouldn't take a Tucker Carlson segment and be like, do I need to reevaluate my life and worldview? Like, Tucker Carlson's not the one.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I actually think I think I understand, but I also think there's tons for me to tons of more information for me to dive through and understand. But
yeah,
I could understand, I'm a much better, not better person, but better person than Tucker Carlson. I shouldn't be second guessing my
Well,
thoughts.
your reading of the Sneetches was based on you reading it at what, 5, 6, 7 years old? If you return to it as a woman that you are now, you're going to think about it in a much more nuanced and complex way. I would not fault yourself for not having a sophisticated understanding of the racial allegory in the Sneetches at the age of 5. But the text itself is explicitly anti-racist, if you ask me. And what is important, in my opinion, is the fact that Dr. Seuss is not being branded as a racist. 6 of his books, 6 of his obscure books, no less, have been branded racist and have been... And they're no longer going to be published at the choosing of a private company. So tell me where cancel culture comes into play. And I think this might be a good way to broaden the conversation into cancel culture, unless you have any more thoughts on Dr. Seuss being canceled so unceremoniously and completely silenced.
Maybe just to talk about why I think he's not actually canceled is because I'm like, first of all, dead.
He is dead.
Second of all, intention. Was it his intention to have children read these books and like grow up with oh my god, what's the word for like undertones of racist acts? I can't think of the word. Like when you do something small, but
microaggression?
You don't know microaggression. Yeah, like where you're trying to fill books with microaggressions and teach kids how to like mindlessly be microaggressive towards people of color and black people.
Yeah, like I think when it
was that his
no,
intention?
I'm quite certain it wasn't. And I think
with these 6 books, how could you know? You didn't know Dr. Seuss or read these
I've
books.
Never met Dr. Seuss. I tried to get an appointment with him
really quick at the grave.
I do talk to his grave. It's really good therapy. He's a great therapist, this Dr. Seuss. So in terms of, I don't think microaggressions are necessarily the thing at issue. As I understand the concept of microaggressions, it's that there are these things, these insensitivities and blind spots that constantly get provoked by people who don't know better, and that to people who are the subject of these microaggressions, it's like if you scratch one place, it's like, okay, I scratched myself. But if you scratch that same place again and 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 again, you're going to have an open wound. It's going to get more serious. Yeah. And so when you touch that again, when that same microaggression occurs, your reaction will be as if you have opened a huge wound, not inflicted a scratch, because it's cumulative.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I've definitely been someone who's blindly been microaggressive towards my friends, and I didn't even notice. And I'm happy that there's been moments where those people have been strong enough to say something to me about it, because obviously that changes my perspective, and it now is no longer something in my blind spot. But growing up, I definitely experienced so many microaggressions myself, people saying I'm hairy, or things about being Mexican when I'm actually Colombian, and just small things like that I was that I realized that hurt over X amount of time in my childhood. There's so many things, and I'm are all microaggressions racist? Would you say
no?
that?
No, I mean, I think I'm white. I'm also gay. I think there are microaggressions. Yeah, anything, any historically repressed minority, I think, is capable of feeling microaggressions. I'm sure white people feel microaggressions to some extent, whether or not they're, I don't want to say valid because they're feeling them, but whether or not they're comparable, I don't think so. But when it comes to the books, I don't think it was microaggressions so much as it was an outright reductive and racist depiction of certain people.
Yeah, and I've never read the books, and I'm unaware of them, so I don't really have a full stance or opinion, but I bet if I saw them, I'd probably be disgusted.
So this most recent episode of Last Week Tonight shows the images at question, in play, whatever. And John Oliver acknowledges that it's uncomfortable for him to show these images. They're uncomfortable images. They're certainly not images that teach me something from this discomfort. It's just
Gross.
it's you're gonna depict an Asian person wearing a conical hat and eating with chopsticks. Like, that's not helpful. Why do we need it? Why is it essential? And if you tell me it's because of the preservation of the First Amendment, I would like to say that the First Amendment protects every individual from an infringement of their right to free speech by the government. So the government cannot accuse you of a crime for speaking your mind, except for very limited exceptions, like incitement and other things. So when a company decides to not publish their books, or when a company decides that you can't talk about a certain thing on their platform, like Twitter decides you can't be on their platform, you are not having your free speech rights violated, because Twitter is not the government. Twitter is not the public square. Twitter is a private company moderating an online social network. You have no...
a conversation with millions
right,
of people.
and the Constitution has nothing written into it about Twitter and your right to be on Twitter unimpeded. Nor does it say that you have the right to say anything you want at all times with no consequences from anyone ever. You simply cannot be persecuted or prosecuted by the state for expressing your opinion. But if you express an opinion and everyone in the room says, that's a racist opinion, your free speech has not been abridged. And if you don't want to talk anymore because you're afraid of being called racist, your freedom of speech has not been abridged. I'm willing to admit something's happening there where you don't feel comfortable speaking, but it's not a constitutional infringement.
Yeah. On the broader spectrum of cancel culture, I think it's just such a wide spectrum, and as cancel culture has kind of existed, I don't really remember when it started, but I think it...
I do.
Who was the first person to get
I mean,
canceled?
it's not like the first person, but the first person in like the first...
You're like,
it's the Dixie Chicks. I want to talk to you about the Dixie Chicks.
Oh, when they became the Chicks?
No, maybe? I don't know.
You don't... They're the Chicks now.
I'm not sure if that's what I'm referencing. Perhaps it is. And perhaps you could...
Are you talking about the
Yes.
band?
So in the Bush administration, after we launched a war in Iraq, one of the Dixie Chicks at a concert made a comment about how they are ashamed to be from the same state as the President of the United States. And Republicans were extremely offended by the lack of patriotism or nationalism, depending on how you see it, displayed by the Dixie Chicks. And so there was a boycott of their music, a burning of their CDs. So, I mean, the modern template for cancel culture was forged by conservatives. So I would say the Dixie Chicks.
The Dixie Chicks were the first people to get canceled. But I feel like now, like, I'm a creature of TikTok and the internet, and I'm going to say a bunch of random names that you probably won't know, but there's, like, the Lopez brothers, who are, like, dancers on TikTok and have allegedly slept with minors, and, like, they get canceled, and then they end up, like, still existing on platforms and getting millions of views, even though they're potentially people who sleep with underage children. You know, it's like and then there's like people like Jeffree Star who get canceled for like very racist and problematic pasts, and people stop purchasing and supporting their makeup brand. And I think there's all types of and different levels of cancel culture for sure, and they're all about different types of things. I think what's really hard is like the bigger your audience is, the more hate you get, and as a single individual person, that is probably really hard and just like super drowning. So like on a empathetic standpoint, I'm like, wow, it
must be tough.
It must be really fucking hard to go through that, but like, cause I could make a mistake, right? And I could be held accountable by my peers and my friends and my family members. And, like, that is still equally as heavy Or no, it's not equally as heavy. It's heavy, but it's not like
Public.
not being able to open your phone and like, or not be able to open the internet in general and not see your name or not be slandered. And not only that, like when you make mistakes on the internet, people come for your family. They find out where you live. Like it just becomes so excessive. It's like they find every little minute little mistake that you made. And once you're a public figure and you're getting canceled versus just being like, I don't know, Joe Schmo from...
He's canceled. Don't mention him on this podcast.
Sorry. A guy. If you're just being a guy on the internet or a guy in your neighborhood, it's a lot different. But then again, like you could get canceled in your whole town. Like if you post something on Facebook, like I saw a girl from our high school, like make a post about how they loved President Trump, like at the end of...
I remember you showing this to me.
Yeah, at the end of... or right before Biden got inaugurated. And it was just like everyone in that grade went for that post and like had something to say. But she's... at the end of the day, that girl's probably fine. Like, won't... like, her whole life isn't ruined versus like... YouTube star Shane Dawson like can't probably leave his house without someone saying something awful to him or who knows what. Like there's just so many levels of cancel culture that it's scary, and sometimes people get canceled for nothing. Like I remember TikTok star Dixie D'Amelio was like getting a chef was making food for her and there was a snail. And she didn't like the snail, and she, like, made a gross face, and they tried to cancel her for being so privileged and, like, having a chef in her house.
Wait.
And, like,
they tried to cancel someone for being grossed out by a snail?
Yeah, by eating a snail. Being tricked into eating a snail. They're like,
wait, excuse me? They were coerced into eating something, or otherwise they ate something that they didn't understand what it was. And then when they found out it was a snail, they expressed disgust. And that is...
Yes, and they were like, can we get dinosaur chicken nuggets instead? They asked their private chef. And then, like, the internet tried to cancel.
Yeah, that's like, absolutely absurd. Oh, my goodness.
Like, there's absurdities of cancel culture, and then there's also parts of cancel culture that have some weight, but also I think the amount of hate people send towards someone isn't going to make them change. Because... at, like, the core level of change, it has to come from within.
I think you brought up a lot of good points, and I want to return to them after a short break. This episode of The Liberal Bubble is brought to you by privatized health insurance, providing individuals the illusory promise of freedom of choice when choosing insurance and doctors, while simultaneously restricting individuals' access to health care. If you have health insurance, chances are you were lucky enough to have the freedom to choose primarily between EPOs and HMOs, closed networks of healthcare providers which refuse to cover medical expenses from doctors outside the limited network you freely chose. As an individual consumer, I've had the freedom to pick any plan I'd like from a small list of options composed exclusively of closed networks. It's truly liberating. Need to see a specialist? Choose freely from the limited options and hope to God you'll find a high-quality doctor within your network. Not able to find the clinician you need in your area? That sounds difficult. Hopefully you'll find comfort in the fact you're being denied access to affordable healthcare by the plan that you chose. Freedom of choice truly is the best medicine, especially when it prevents you from actually getting medicine. Now, I've had private health insurance before. I would not promote something that I did not believe in. Come on, guys. So I, for one, have experienced the rapturous joy of suddenly being told that a medication you've taken for years is suddenly no longer covered by insurance. No justification needed. Do you have a doctor that you work well with, but that isn't covered by your new insurance plan? Want to continue seeing them? You have that choice. All you gotta do is take out your wallet and be ready to shell out astronomical sums of money for the privilege of choosing your doctor. There's nothing more freeing than insurmountable cost barriers. We all know freedom isn't free. And the same is true when it comes to choosing your doctors. Between premiums, co-pays, deductibles, denied claims, and out-of-network doctors, it's actually exorbitantly expensive. But the illusion of free choice? Now that's priceless. Privatized health insurance, providing you the unfettered freedom to choose between restricted networks of doctors. What are you waiting for? Nothing's stopping you from potentially getting access to quality healthcare. Good luck, and may the odds be ever in your favor. Back to the show. And we're back. So, Glo, you touched on a lot of really interesting things in your last comment that I wanted to revisit. You mentioned that Shane Dawson probably couldn't leave his house without receiving some level of animosity directed at him. I find that regrettable. I agree that sending hate and vitriol someone's way isn't going to do much to effectuate change within them because it will provoke a shame-based reaction, which is usually defensiveness.
Yeah.
And that's tricky because it's well, you don't want to say nothing, but it's also not incumbent upon you to change the problematic person in question because, quite frankly, you don't have the ability. So that.
Mm-hmm. And I've learned that aspect, you can't change people, people have to change themselves in all other in romantic ways, in friendship ways. So you have to understand that applies in every type of way. You have no control of someone else's thoughts or actions.
Right. So you can bring to their attention the fact that you find their views unacceptable or a thing they said particularly reprehensible. That's protected by free speech. But the way I understand cancel culture is the key concept is monetization, right? In the case of the TikTok people who slept with minors and still have followers, I don't know them. I'm not on TikTok. But what is distressing there is that they've done something that is societally wrong, we morally condemn, and they continue to profit. So the goal of cancel culture, as I understand it, cancel culture as a concept, is nothing but capitalism functioning properly. It's individual consumers banding together over a shared cause or set of values to use their purchasing power to make a statement.
But now I think it's become much more than that, where if someone is famous on the internet and has beef, quote unquote, or an argument or doesn't agree with another famous person, all their followers, because usually they're young, sometimes they're old, there's really no age limit on Twitter fingers and leaving.
But they do
comments,
turn to trigger fingers really quick.
They really do, and it's scary to see. And I mean, growing up, I would put myself on the internet and make YouTube videos, and I would get hate, but it was just random people. It was never nowadays people will send their army of fans, which is usually millions of people, to just destroy someone emotionally over comments or actions, and that's not gonna do anything. That's only gonna bring them more viewers and end up leaving them more monetization.
Right, because if you provoke a shame-based reaction, they're not going to change. They'll probably entrench themselves. And if you give them attention, like you said, by retweeting or engaging with their post algorithmically, they're going to get boosted if it's a question of social media.
Yeah. Nowadays, any press is good press, and it's probably been like that for a while, but bring up more social media stars. James Charles has been canceled.
Yes, he has.
He has, from his last time he got canceled, from the Dramageddon, Dear Sisters, if you're listening, I hope you're into entertainment drama, not just political drama like me. But he had 15 million followers when that happened, and right now he's probably sitting around 26 million. He's benefited.
Yeah, cancel culture
overall.
has really destroyed his career, it seems. So I don't understand why conservatives who are all about the free market and the expression of shared values, as Tucker Carlson highlighted, are so against the expression of those values within the marketplace in the form of not patronizing a certain business or not patronizing a certain artist or whatever it is. You know, it seems like a very reasonable and entirely American thing to do. It's an expression of values and what you think within the marketplace as an individual, together with other individuals. This week, I'm boycotting Amazon in support of workers attempting to unionize. Next week, I will not be boycotting Amazon. But am I changing the world? No. Is Amazon canceled? No. But I have identified something that I think is worthy, the cause of unionization, and I am using my power as a consumer to voice that fact. I am not giving Amazon my money for the week in which this issue is under consideration. It's very small. But monetization is central, right? The idea that you could lose your ability to profit based on something you said. Money's key is really the thing that I think is important. The idea that you're ruining careers, but the idea that and you mentioned there are levels, right? There are people who get canceled for like James Gunn, the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, got canceled for problematic tweets and was fired and then rehired later because they were like, we overreacted. And then there are people like Woody Allen. Those are two different ball games. And how you choose to engage with that is a personal choice. Now, on the subject of someone like Woody Allen, I had a phase where I just bought a ton of DVDs to fill a neurochemical imbalance. It did not work. But some of them were Woody Allen DVDs. I own them now. He already has my money before I was privy to the extremely problematic nature of the individual. So when I watch these movies, Woody Allen's been canceled, whatever the fuck that means, right? I still allow myself to watch these movies with the framing in mind that the person that created this work of art is, in my view, morally reprehensible. And it is, and that's no means a unique example. I read Alice in Wonderland recently. I thought it was wonderful. I will let my kids read it. It was written by a pedophile in the Victorian times. There are things, these people, artists are imperfect, and it's okay to point out those imperfections and condemn them as individuals. And you just have to, or in my opinion, keep that in mind as you engage with their work. Or you can choose to avoid it altogether. That's an entirely valid reaction too. If that aligns with your values, do it up. You also mentioned the idea of Joe Schmo, who has been canceled, and I regret having to mention him again. But just a random guy or gal or non-binary individual being canceled for something they say within their town, right? That touches on this idea of social ostracism. You're going to be ostracized and shut out from society for saying something that everyone else regards as wrong. Yes, this is regrettable. Again, it is normal. So it's the social dynamic. So if it's not a question of First Amendment rights, nobody is required to listen to your thoughts and agree with you. And the people who have been socially ostracized historically have not been white. So I think a lot about the discussion over canceling prayer and banning it in schools and confusing the right to pray anywhere with the right to pray at all. Right.
In general.
I think that's what people are grappling with in terms of social ostracism. Oh my goodness, I say things and my actions have consequences. I don't know. This is breaking news, apparently.
We've all experienced that to some level, whether it be a lie you tell, or being a bully, or getting everyone has experienced your words being accountable, saying you're going to do something and then you don't,
or saying something
whatever
downright
it may be.
fucked up and then someone calling you out on it. I've had it happen to me, and I have to be like, you know what? Yeah, that was shitty, and I need to be better. Or sometimes I get called out and I'm like, I disagree. I think what I said was fine. That's very rare. But the fear of social ostracism is very real. As a gay person, I feel socially ostracized quite often. I fear it quite often. And I'm not asking for pity. Put down your world's smallest violin. But only that the fear of ostracism over expression of who you are, not unique to conservatism, not unique to racist ideas, is always a dynamic at play. It is always at play. But then you also touched on this concept of cancel culture running amok. I think that's absolutely a thing. I think there's a tendency on the left to turn Twitter fingers into trigger fingers, as you noted earlier, and signal an identity and a shared values by piling on someone verbally. Whether or not it's productive, I don't know. Whether or not they're deserving of such treatment, obviously is case by case. But I think there is a genuine tendency to be quick to judge, but there's also an ability to reevaluate that judgment.
I agree. I think people usually do act rashly.
Yeah, and being canceled is not a life sentence.
I've done it. We've
absolutely.
All done
I've absolutely done it. And I just think that the concept of cancel culture is an absolute joke. That's my belief. So we've arrived at it. And I can't help but find it somewhat amusing. Like I do the concept of a war on Christmas. I love it. I celebrate Christmas. I like Christmas just fine. But I am a soldier in the war on Christmas, whatever the fuck that means, whatever fake conflict that is. Because I think it's genuinely hilarious that, first off, the word war is being used entirely incorrectly. I'm very uncomfortable anytime war is used in any context other than describing an armed conflict between two groups. So a war on Christmas is fucking insane, just linguistically. But, the evidence that they will cite, the red cups at Starbucks that don't say Merry Christmas, the absence of a Christmas tree in the public square, strikes me as hilarious. I don't know.
My thing is just it's just kind of the same. It's Christmas is obviously one of the most celebrated, majority in America, probably Christmas is one of the most celebrated holidays in December, I would assume. There's obviously other holidays. I feel like people just want more of those other holidays,
or at least not a complete they don't want it to feel like Christmas is the only fucking thing happening. And I understand
I don't
that.
think there needs to be a quote unquote war on Christmas. It's just I think cancel culture arose as fast as as people got more woke, cancel culture got more out of hand because there was this new wokeness that people didn't know how to navigate, and they just knew that morally they knew things that either they've done in the past were wrong and they felt guilt. So it's oh, I see people making these mistakes I've made in the past. I'm gonna tell them that they're the worst fucking person in the world, when probably internally that's how they feel.
Yeah, it's there's something very performative about
we've
it.
All done it. There is performative acts. I could definitely be the type of person who could have done them without even noticing, or noticing after the fact, or whatever. But as we get more accustomed to this new era where our generation is the generation of change, I think we'll be able to navigate it more or better, and hopefully, like, instead of cancel culture, it could be like, let's chat.
I think that would be great.
Conversation
but it's
culture.
difficult when we're having across the political spectrum 2 different conversations. One about
and it's
like
also
deplatforming and demonetizing harmful people with beliefs that we collectively do not agree with, and there can be disagreement amongst America as to what beliefs those are and who those people are, and the other conversation, which is about the infringement on free speech. That, I believe, is absolute nonsense. And if we're going to have a discussion about cancel culture and the infringement of free speech, we're going to talk about the motherfucking HUAC panel investigating communist activity in the United States, which was a thing where the government would track down and put on trial communist subversives for free expression of thought. So, there you go. That's what infringement on free speech looks like, when the government actually intervenes to stop the expression of thought. I'm not saying communism is great. I'm not making a comment on communism at all. I'm just historically referencing the fact that communism is a perfect example of actual infringement of First Amendment rights. The McCarthy era is cancel culture.
And I know nothing about
Maybe we'll do an episode on it. I don't know.
Yeah.
The Red Scare.
Yeah. Overall, I think cancel culture is definitely something that needs
canceled
to get a grip on. Yeah, I think it just needs to be reevaluated on the way we hold people accountable.
Yeah, I think like as a mechanism of accountability, it's a perfectly fine one. You just need to, it needs to be used with care. And I'm not accusing anyone of not using it with care. I don't have any particular grievance to levy. But I do want to say that this hubbubaloo about Dr. Seuss is absolute nonsense. And that canceling is not tantamount to being muzzled or imprisoned. You are not entitled to the good graces of every individual you meet, nor are you entitled to have your opinion received well by everyone you meet. You have a right to express it without being arrested. That's that on that. And with that, we're coming to the end of this episode of The Liberal Bubble. One fish, two fish, racist bluefish. I hope you join us again next week. Same tub, same day, Tuesday, for another episode of The Liberal Bubble. In the meantime, you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, at Skydoge Bubble, SKYDOGE Bubble, or reach me by email at skydogebubble@gmail.com. Send me any questions, comments, topics you'd like discussed. Lady Gleep, where can we find you?
You could find me at the Lady Gleep on Twitter. I'm thinking about making a new Twitter. And you can find me on my Instagram at Lady Gleep and TikTok on the
Wonderful.
same.
I hope you find us. We'll be waiting.
Talk soon.
Hey, bye.